Hey guys, it's Miss Rector. We're going to get into handwriting analysis and forgery and counterfeiting today. So I'm going to talk pretty fast here because there's a lot of stuff to go over. So, um, counterfeiting, vocabulary here, document analysis, document expert. We'll talk about what an exemplar is, forgery, what's fraudulence, and a questioned document. So let's get into it. Um, what's the goal of forensics handwriting analysis? So the goal is to analyze and answer questions about any suspicious documents, determine their authorship using a variety of scientific methods. So two writings are the product of one person if the similarities are unique and there are no fundamental unexplainable differences. So we're going to see what that means. So a document expert is a person who is specially trained, scientifically analyzes the handwriting and other features of the document. So again, it's got to be a scientifically based process. This is not the same as a graphologist. So you may see those shows where they're like looking at somebody's handwriting and they're like, I can tell this person is very tense and angry and has all these characteristics in their personality. That's different. Okay. We are not talking about that. That's not really a very well accepted part of forensics because you look at my handwriting, you're going to be like, oh, she's a serial killer. And remember, in science, it has to be repeatable. You have to be able to predict things from it. So the fact that my handwriting looks like another serial killer's handwriting doesn't necessarily make me a serial killer. So you can't make those big judgments from and those sort of inferences. What is the job of the document expert? So first of all, we would need to ID individuals from their handwriting, judgment of signatures as genuine or forgery, the origin of historical documents, dating documents, so how old is this paper that this thing was written on, ID and alteration, additions, anything that's been deleted from documents, counterfeiting documents, to ID counterfeit documents, investigate computer printouts, commercial printing, paper, and ink. That is what they do. So, what is a question document? This is any kind of document. It can be a signature, handwriting, typewriting, any other kind of mark, and whose authenticity is in dispute. So we're not certain that it's real. I won't go too far into history here. Like I said, this will take long enough as it is. But in the 30s, you might have heard about the Limburg baby kidnapping. They used handwriting analysis to pretty much build the case against Hauptmann. That's how you say it, maybe. I'm not quite sure. And anyway, he was put to death for that. So it was a big deal. And there's still some doubt about the handling of those documents. But courts have not always recognized handwriting analysis as credible evidence. But since 1999, the Supreme Court determined that the Court of Appeals determined that handwriting analysis qualified as a form of expert testimony. So now, once we've applied enough scientific analysis to things, we can start to put it in as evidence. But it's still not going to be the one thing you want your case hinging on. So, what are the most common question documents? Letters, checks, driver's license, contracts, wills, voter registration, all this year, right? Passports, petitions, threatening letters, suicide notes. Did they really commit suicide or did somebody else write that note? Lottery tickets. Hey, let me change this 3 to an 8 and I won, right? So, what are 3 basic steps to process of analyzing handwriting samples? So, question document and standards, you need exemplars. So, what does this word exemplars mean? These are going to be examples of the person's normal handwriting under normal conditions. So you don't really want to get this from, let's say, a suspect that you have in custody and say, I need a sample of your handwriting. They may try to alter things. You want something that they wrote when they weren't stressed, when they just normally were writing things. So you want to go find, a journal that they kept at home, or some letters that they wrote to friends, right, that were authored by them. A sample should be obtained without letting them know. There you go. Characteristics of the questioned item are compared with a known standard. So that's the thing that you found that you knew they wrote. And then experts determine which characteristics are valuable for drawing a conclusion about the authenticity and authorship of the questioned document. Everyone's handwriting is going to exhibit a natural variation. I bet if you picked up a pen right now, which this could be a fun experiment, try to write your name, just write your name like you normally do, and then try to write it exactly the same without any variation. You probably won't. Every time I sign my name 5 different times, it's going to look 5 different versions slightly. But there's going to be some characteristics that are the same in all of them. So I might, some of the things that can affect it, am I using a pen or a pencil, marker, crayon? What tool are you using to write? My mood, my age has changed, or my age has changed, obviously, but my handwriting has changed as I've aged too. Speed. So if I'm taking notes really quickly, that's definitely going to look different than if I am writing out a thank you note to my grandma, and being very careful about it. So despite minor variations, you're going to see unique handwriting style. With the slant of my letters is probably going to be the same. Little curls that I put in. The height can distinguish things. So although we can, vary things slightly, most of us do things out of habit. So let's try this right now. So grab yourself a pen and paper and try this at home. You write the words, I smell good food. Okay? Now, you did that while looking at your paper. Now I want you to write it again without looking. So you're looking up at the wall and you're writing, I smell good food. And then when you look at them, they should be pretty similar. They might be a little crooked. Maybe you didn't, stay on the lines, but you probably wrote them about the same. So you are going to be doing some handwriting analysis tomorrow, I believe. So these are the things that you need to do when you are looking at something. You need to sort of digest each piece and say, okay, let me look at the line quality. Do the letters flow? Are they erratic and shaky? Are they equally spaced or are they crowded? The size, consistency. So the ratio of height, width, is that consistent? The writing is continuous, or do they lift their pen? Capitals and lowercase letters, are they connected and continuous? Are they not connected or continuous? Does the letter begin and end on the page, or the part of the letter is missing? So some people, don't close their A's. May have an open A if they're doing cursive, like more like a U than an A, right? Cursive versus printed letters. Some people write in cursive naturally. Some people don't. Some people have a mixture of things. The pen pressure, you write real dark or do you write very light? I've had students that write so light I can hardly read what they write. The slant, so the angle, the slant of your letters can be consistent. Line habits, I better quit moving this cursor down here, right? Line habits, the text is on, below, or above the line. Do they have any fancy curls or loops? When they make their G, is it got this real big loop at the bottom? And are there any misspelled things? Do they cross their I's? Do they dot their T's? Where do they cross their I's and dot their T's? That can be an example of something that is unique to somebody's writing. Even if they're trying to change their handwriting, they might still do those things the same way because your brain says this is how it needs to be done. Handwriting experts examine these 12 major categories when they look at exemplars, and then they take that and apply it to the question document to see if they match. So letter form, the shape of the letters, curve of the letters, angle, slant, proportional size, all these things that we just sort of saw on that last chart is just, these are the three main categories. There's line form, so smoothness, darkness, upward, lines in the upward compared to the downward stroke, influenced by speed and pressure, and sometimes even your writing utensil. And then again, formatting, the spacing between letters, between words. So let's look at some examples here. So line quality here, you can see these are much darker than those, a lot more pin pressure here. This one, look at the spacing between these words. To me, that's a lot of space between words. That's so, I mean, they put the comma here. Like for me, I'd put a comma right here, but this person puts all this space between even their period and the last word. This one, maybe a purposely distorted one. So maybe this is somebody trying to write with their left hand, misspell some words on purpose to try and disguise their handwriting. But you can almost guarantee that, the way they write their B or, some other letter in here is going to be consistent with the way they write their letters in reality too. Here's a low skilled writer, which I find really funny. This looks more like my handwriting than a highly skilled writer. So somebody who's, practiced writing a lot, writes very neatly. And here are 4 signatures from the same person. So in this one, you can see there's variations. So again, I'd like you to try this at home. Write your name like 4 times in a row. And you'll see some variation from time to time in one thing or another. But, their S's, the way they write their S's are all similar. The way they put those 2 T's in Scott, you can kind of see a little bit of a different slant. But they all sort of look like H's, don't they? The TT looks like an H there. The Smith part of it, again, that second one might look a little different from the first one, but the consistency of how they're making their characters is still there. So any obvious differences between the standard and the question document would show different authors. Some such samples can be visually eliminated without ever having to assess the list. So some things you can just look at and be like, you did not write that. I usually use an example of, but I can't find it anymore, where my son tried to forge my name on something he had to get signed, a behavior thing he had to get signed for school. And he spelled my name wrong. And it was, in print because he didn't know how to write cursive at the time. So it was obvious that, this third grader wrote it himself. And it didn't take a handwriting analysis to figure it out. So yes, I got another report home on him for that one too. Similarities do not guarantee common authorship. So just because they are the same doesn't mean that it was the same person. So some of us, may have learned to write letters the same way and just naturally have similar characteristics. My mom looks at my handwriting and she says it looks like her father's handwriting. So, somehow we have that in common. Document experts must take into account a great number of factors and a statistically significant repetition of similarities in their analysis. So pros can tell if a person has tried to disguise their handwriting or copy someone else's. Suspects should not be shown the question document, and they should not be given any instructions about punctuation or spelling. Just, hey, write this. The pen and paper should be similar to that of the question document. Technology used. So initial comparisons are done with the naked eye and, handheld lenses and microscopes. Specialized equipment might reveal minor details. Infrared spectroscope can determine if there's more than one kind of ink has been used. Then you have like biometric signature pads. These are, like on computers, those things they give you the little computer pin to sign. And there's a lot that can be done there too. It can recognize the speed, the pressure, the rhythm of how you sign your name. Then there's computer analysis, which can be a lot faster and more objective than a person doing it by hand. So there is the Forensic Information System for Handwriting, which is acronym FISH. It's a database. It's maintained by the Secret Service. Documents are scanned into it and can be determined that no two writers pen their words exactly the same, nor do they have the same combination of handwriting characteristics. So your handwriting is pretty unique to you. Handwriting in the courtroom. After being expertly analyzed, the expert will prepare a witness report for both the defense, and the prosecutor will ask questions, and the analyzer, the expert witness, will answer those questions. So again, you really have to remember this has to be a scientific process. You have to have somebody who's certified to do this, not just, Joe off the street. Yeah, he says they look the same. There's a certification involved in doing this, and it's peer-reviewed scientific process. Shortcomings. So one limitation is that the quality of the standards obtained often determines the quality of the comparison analysis. So if you don't have good samples, you're not going to get a good comparison. Another limitation could be the effects of mood, age, drugs, fatigue, illness, and those can all affect a person's handwriting too and make it look a little different. So you should know what a document expert is. You should know what their job is. How are fingerprints related to handwriting? We kind of said that too. List the 12 categories for the writing exemplar. Now, tomorrow, when you are given the samples, you might want to look at this page. It's in the book notes that you took, and you might want to have that up in front of you as you are trying to compare one word to another and determine if the handwriting is a match. All right. No, we're not done right. What is fraudulence? So, when a material gain, such as money, accompanies a forgery, that's called fraudulence. Okay, so generally the primary purpose for forging something is to profit, right? Check forgery. There are approximately $27 million in illegitimate checks cashed each day. Some of them get pretty creative. You saw the story in the book where the guy overpaid his tax registration for his car, I think it was, and then they wrote him a check back. He overpaid it by like $1.65, and they wrote him a check back, and he altered that check to make it like 1.6 million and cashed it. So yeah, again, he got caught, but preventing check forgery. We do a lot to prevent forgery by how we make the paper. We print them on this chemically sensitive paper. We use different fonts that make it difficult to recreate. Use high resolution borders, so it's difficult to just put it on a copy machine and make a copy, right? Print checks as multiple color patterns. Embed fibers that glow under different types of light, and use chemical wash detection systems that can change the color when the check is altered. So let's look at some of that. Literary forgery. So this refers to writing, so like historic letters, manuscripts. These can go for a lot of money, so some people do try to forge these things. They usually try to duplicate the original documents on similar materials. So they might, really collect old books. And in some of those old books, there would be blank pages in the back. So that forger might be able to get some old paper like that because paper was made differently. And that would be an easy way to tell that it was a forgery if you had it on brand new white copy paper, right? The writing utensils and the inks used, the forgers might even mix their own inks to match the materials that were used back at the time the document should have been written. So they might even add chemicals to the paper to try to age it. Um, in the 1980s, Mark Hoffman made several forgeries, 116 pages of a lost Mormon document, and he set off some bombs trying to get his plan into action. But he killed some people with the bombs, and that eventually got him a life sentence. So counterfeiting. When false documents or other items are copied for the purpose of deception, that's called counterfeiting. This could be traveler's checks, savings bonds, currency, what else? Food stamps, postage stamps, coins. In the past, with access to a scanner and a color printer, it wasn't really difficult to counterfeit currency. So I heard stories that, when they first put in the vending machines that, took dollars, like scanned in your dollar, that people could just make a photocopy of a dollar and cut that out and put it in there. And since then, the technology sort of changed, so you can't do that anymore. Sorry. Now the Secret Service they've changed money a lot. And also the technology. For example, when I was trying to make a photocopy of a page in your book that had a picture of a dollar on it, the copy machine would not let me make a copy of that page. I could copy all the other pages, but not that page until I covered up the dollar. So one way we catch fakes is it just doesn't feel right. Money's not printed on paper. Money's printed on a combination of fibers. So in 1865, trying to combat counterfeiting, Abe Lincoln started the Secret Service. 1996, the government started adding new security features, to make incidences of counterfeiting more difficult. Not impossible, but more difficult. You got to work harder for it, right? So there's pins now. If you ever give somebody a bill, they usually even check 20s, but definitely if you give somebody a 50 or 100 at the grocery store or somewhere, they're going to pull out this pin and mark it. And that is an iodine pin. And what happens is if the bill is printed on paper, then that is going to react with the starch in the paper and you're going to get this bluish black color. But since money's not printed on paper, it will not do that. It's a different fiber. So you kind of get this pale yellow-brown line that just fades away real fast. So the manufacturers of this pen claim that it's 98% accuracy. But some counterfeiters will go ahead and bleach $1 bills and then print on them. So that would, the pen would read like it was a real bill. Some of the things to look for on your bills. The portrait stands out. I'm not going to read all these to you. You can read them yourself. But yeah, if you look at an old $10 bill would look very different from, you get this little strip in there now. There's all these little things that would make it really hard to just make a copy of, or if you're going to put a lot of money into trying to recreate it. So it wouldn't be worth it to you unless you were printing really big bills. Again, here's sort of an arrow pointing to all the things, and then on the next page here, it'll tell you, this is the portrait, more lifelike, than counterfeit money. There's fine lines and smooth lines, so it's even hard to tell on this imaging. I need a higher definition camera to show it to you. Same. So at the checkout counter, we're going to test, use the iodine pen. Does it pass? It turns yellow, it passes. It's going to fade real fast. If it turns black or dark brown, it's a fail. So what can be forged? Checks, Could be counterfeit or they could be altered. That's where you might check for two different pens on it, two different inks. Money, paper or coin. Identities, passport, social security, driver's license. Credit cards, theft of your card or card number. ATMs, things like that. People put those scanners in them to try and pick up your card numbers and they can use them later. Then there's art forgeries, contracts like wills and medical records. Simulated forgery, so one made by copying an exemplar. And then there's a traced forgery where you're tracing an exemplar. And then there's a blind forgery where you don't know what their handwriting look like. You're just signing their name to it. Must be compared against an exemplar. So that's the best way to do it. Look for any abnormalities that may come up. Two checks with the same serial number. That's a red flag, right? Ink mysteriously starts running. Paper used is different than the normal should be. So who confirms forgeries? The CIA, the FBI, Scotland Yard in the UK. What are the punishments? So first degree felony, presentation, used or forged items. Then there's second degree felony, possession with intent to use. And then third degree misdemeanor, comply with forgery or forger complicity. Sorry. Famous forgers. You can look up some stories. And then more about document analysis. I think we've spent enough time. I won't show you any of that. So let's see. I think that's it. Have a good day.